An ancient temple stood beneath the light of dawn, silent and solemn. No one imagined that within its walls a secret still slept, buried for centuries. Upon entering, the air changed. The candles illuminated dark corridors and enormous columns, as if time itself had stopped there. Among those shadows walked a young priest. His face was serious, and his gaze restless, like someone who senses that something important is about to be revealed. In another room, the elderly priests spoke in hushed voices. Their gestures were tense, as if they were carrying a weight they didn't want to share with anyone. The young man continued forward through a narrow corridor where the darkness seemed denser. Each step brought him closer to something unknown. Then he saw a wall different from the others. It was old, but there was something about it that caught his attention, like a barely visible scar in the stone. Looking more closely, he noticed ancient markings and an almost hidden crack. His intuition told him something was hidden there. He tapped the wall gently and heard a hollow sound. Behind the stone, there was empty space. It was no longer a suspicion, it was a certainty. Carefully, he moved a stone. Little by little, a small secret compartment appeared, one that had remained sealed for a long time. Inside, he found an ancient manuscript, wrapped in cloth worn by the years. It was fragile, but it seemed to hold an enormous truth. Holding it with both hands, the priest felt fear and amazement at the same time. He knew that what lay before him was not just a simple book. He opened the manuscript and began to read. Each page spoke of hidden events, of decisions made in secret, and of a truth that had been kept for generations. Between the lines, he understood something painful. It had been hidden to protect the faith, but also to protect the power and reputation of those who had concealed it. The priest was torn. If he stayed silent, he would remain obedient. If he spoke, everything could change. But he could no longer pretend he hadn't seen the truth. Finally, he stood before the temple leaders with the manuscript in his hands. There was no turning back now. He had discovered an ancient secret, and now he had to decide whether to live in silence or face the truth. In secret, the ancient priests hid sacred pages within the temple wall. They knew that content should not fall into the wrong hands, and that one day it could change everything. A long time later, the young priest discovered an ancient mark on the wall. Seeing it, he immediately understood that he was facing a clue linked to the lost manuscript. Alone in the darkness of the temple, he held the manuscript in his hands. The silence around him made the weight of the truth feel even deeper. Then he looked up toward a high window where the morning light streamed in. That contrast between shadow and brightness made him think that perhaps the moment had come to reveal what was hidden. Shortly after, he was summoned before the council of elder priests. Their stern faces made it clear that the young man would not easily find support. One of the leaders pointed at the manuscript with a firm, hard gesture. The room grew heavy with tension, as if the temple's history were about to break apart in that very instant. The young priest listened in silence as the elders spoke. Though he maintained a firm posture, inside he knew that this decision would test his faith and his loyalty. There was no longer fear in his face, only determination. He had reached a point where staying silent would mean betraying himself. He clutched the manuscript to his chest with all the strength he had. The open door in the background seemed to invite him to leave, but also to face the consequences of his choice. He then began walking down the long corridor of the temple. Each step seemed to close one chapter of his life and open another, more uncertain, but truer. Upon reaching the outside, he saw the temple bathed in the golden light of dawn. Faced with that immensity, he understood that his personal struggle was small compared to the truth he carried. Back inside, the temple fell into absolute silence. The manuscript was no longer there, but its absence seemed to fill the place with even greater force than before. The wall was sealed once again, as if the secret had returned to its hiding place. However, something in the air suggested that the story could no longer remain dormant forever. The priest walked away down the stone path, alone and in silence. He carried no easy answers with him, but he did carry the weight of a truth he could not forget. Finally, the temple stood outlined against the dawn sky. The golden light upon the ancient stone seemed to announce that, although the secret remained hidden, the truth had already begun to awaken. If you're enjoying this content, subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. This helps me keep bringing you more stories like this.